You're listening to Simply the Best Sports Take, the best podcast breaking down the best stuff in sports with host Sean Bingham. His takes are so good, he dropped the mic, but then you wouldn't be able to hear him, and that would suck.
Welcome into STB Sports Take, Simply the Best Sports Podcast. I am your host, Sean Bingham. Thank you for being here. We are on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor Podcasts. Everywhere you get your podcasts, we are there. Thank you for subscribing, all of you that are subscribed. Those of you that are not, shame on you. Please hit that subscribe button. There are growing numbers. We are growing rapidly. We're not actually, but we're having a lot of fun doing this. And there is some growth, and it's really fun for me when people subscribe and listen. So if you like what you're hearing, hit the subscribe button. If you don't like what you're hearing, then troll me on Twitter or something, or in the comments on YouTube. Like, let's get some interaction here going, you know? Either way, it's like you like it, subscribe. You don't like it, tell me what you hate, argue with me. Then it gets really fun. I love debate. So let's dive in. Obviously, we're talking mainly NBA Finals today. We had 2 games since the last podcast. And the Warriors and the Celtics split, so now it's 2-2. This is the weirdest playoffs ever, okay? I'm sitting here thinking, like, every game it feels like I'm changing my mind on who I think the better team is. And it's been like that this entire playoffs. So many double-digit lopsided victories. The Warriors lost. At one point, they were down by 55 points to the Grizzlies. 55 points. I don't know. I don't have the stats pulled up. I don't even know how I would search this. I'm sure it's findable somewhere on one of those like intense databases. But has there ever been an NBA champion who at one point during the playoffs was losing by 55 points? I certainly can't think of one. I remember the Jazz getting blown out by the Bulls in the 90, I think it was the 97 finals. He was one of those two. I think it was 97. And they scored like 50-something points for the whole game, lost by 40-something. And that was like an absolute joke. Now, the Jazz didn't win the finals, but that's the biggest playoff blowout loss I can think of in my lifetime. The Warriors were down. They didn't end up losing by 55. I think they lost by 30-something, but they were down by 55 at one point. The Celtics have been blown out several times. Even in this series, we're seeing double-digit outcomes regularly. So it's very bizarre, very hard for me to understand. You could argue there's a lot of parity, which is good. You could also argue that there's just like kind of just mediocre play, and maybe the best teams aren't actually here. Maybe the Suns needed to pull their heads out and be here. Maybe the Bucks, really did lose out by losing Chris Middleton, which I think they did. I don't think Boston gets here if Chris Middleton's healthy. That being said, so far in this series, I would say that Boston has looked like slightly the better team. Just slightly. Just ever so little bit. So it's 2-2, heading back to San Francisco. Game 5 is tonight. By the time you get this, it's 3:30 now. I should have it out within an hour. Hopefully some of you are able to listen to this before the game starts, but I'll keep it brief. This will be a quick podcast, but I'm going to give a slight edge to Golden State, and this is tough because Boston has played phenomenal on the road this postseason. In fact, I looked it up right before I sat down here. Boston on the road this postseason, they're 8-3. 8-3 on the road in the playoffs. Not in the regular season against crappy teams, playoff teams like the elite best of the best, the Top Gun, all right, the Top Gun of the NBA. They're 8-3 on the road, including 1-1, obviously, in this series against Golden State. They were 3-1 on the road against Miami, 3-1 on the road in the Eastern Conference Finals. Unbelievable. 2-1 on the road against the Bucks, 2-0 against the Nets. I mean, they have been stellar on the road. Stellar. On top of that, they have not lost back-to-back games this entire postseason, and they just lost at home in Game 4. So you look at all those things and you think, okay, I'm going to give the edge to Boston. However, I look a little bit deeper and I think, okay, a couple things. One, as good as Boston is on the road, Golden State is even better at home. They are just 1-1 in this series against the Celtics, but overall this postseason they're 10-1 at home. Their only loss at home these playoffs was in Game 1 of the Finals against the Celtics. That's it. 10-0 going into that. And they lost one, then they won one, and so now they were 9-0 going into that, lost one, won one, so they're 10-1 overall in the postseason at home. And they're 4-5 on the road, the Warriors are. And by the way, I should mention the Celtics were 6-5 at home so far this postseason. So the Celtics actually have a better record on the road these playoffs by 2 games. They've played 11 games at home, 11 games on the road, 8-3 on the road, 6-5 at home. Very interesting play by the Boston Celtics. And then the Warriors are much better at home. 10-1 at home, 4-5 on the road. So the Warriors' play at home is equally great, even slightly more great than the Celtics' play on the road is. And this game is in Golden State and in San Francisco. And so I'm going to give a slight edge to the Warriors for that reason, but more so because of this. At some point, you got to think experience is going to come to the forefront and be a proving deciding factor in this series in some way, shape, or form, right? The Warriors are showing that they're not the Warriors of old. Draymond Green has been literally awful, like truly and sincerely awful, like so bad it feels like he doesn't actually belong on the court. They need to find playing time for other guys. Okay, that's how bad he's been. His mom is tweeting about it. Draymond's mom, in case you missed it, Draymond's mom tweeted about how bad he's been playing, and he responded to it in a post-game podcast. It's very weird to me that he's doing a podcast after every single game. Like, maybe work on having more points than fouls, or more rebounds than fouls, or more assists than fouls, or anything positive more than fouls. But instead, he goes to the locker room, showers, and immediately gets on a microphone and does a podcast. And don't get me wrong, I realize it doesn't take that much time. I do it here with you guys, but I'm also not in the NBA Finals, okay? It's interesting for him to sit down. This would be like whatever your job is, okay? Say you're a sales manager, okay, and you just had the worst month of selling. You just got 0 sales for the day. Your team got 0 sales. You got a couple cancellations. Nothing went great. And then you go and do a podcast on like how to sell better. It's just like a weird, it's a weird thing he's doing so many podcasts. He's clearly setting up his career for the next phase, which he obviously wants to be in broadcasting. I don't blame him. He's done guest appearances a bunch on the networks, TNT and stuff like that. He's got his daily podcast. So I don't blame him. He's probably making some money. Not that he needs it. He's making way more playing basketball. But I think what he's doing is setting himself up for a future in broadcasting. And he probably enjoys it, which, again, I don't blame him. Here I am doing a podcast. But I think it's very weird that he can't seem to wait until the series is over. He's doing a podcast after every game. And he's playing like crap. And his team's 2-2. So I don't know. I think that's bizarre. But you got to think that at some point he's going to have a breakout game. And even more so, Klay Thompson has also been playing very pedestrian, very average. He's not been shooting great. He's not been scoring great. And you know that he's capable, even though he's not the Klay of old. And I don't think we'll ever see that Klay again. I do think we're going to see improvements. I think Klay next year will be a lot better than we saw this year. He's going to have his game legs back. His rhythm will be back. He'll have a whole summer to get stronger, work on certain things, more rehab, all that stuff. But he's also already shown flashes of the old Klay, which is usually how it goes. I know for me and my athletic abilities, I'm 40 years old now, so obviously my athletic abilities are not what they used to be. And I noticed that as that was waning, it didn't just like fall off a cliff, right? You don't just like all of a sudden you can't do it anymore. You just can do it a lot less frequently, a lot less consistently. And so with Klay, you got to think, and this is me talking about pickup basketball, by the way, nothing professional, but you got to think that with Klay, he's going to have a breakout game. He's due. Like, he is due for a breakout game. Draymond is due for a breakout game by his standards. I don't think that's going to be like 30 points by any means, but maybe he scores 15 and grabs 10 rebounds and 10 assists. I mean, he's very capable of triple-doubles. So you got to think that Draymond will have a breakout game by his standards. Klay will have a breakout game by his standards, which would be like 7 of 10 from 3, 32 points, a few key defensive stops, things like that. Klay is due for a game like that. Draymond's due for like a triple-double. Steph is going to keep being Steph. He had the greatest game of his finals career, which is now 6 finals deep. He's 3-2 in the finals series. This is his 6th. He wants to go 4-2. You don't want to be 500 in the finals. LeBron is below 500 and he gets hammered for it all the time, right? You want to be above 500. You want to be on that biggest stage and say, I had a winning record on the biggest stage in the game. Jordan is 6-0, and everybody loves that. I personally don't think it's as big of a deal as others do. To me, Jordan is the greatest because of a lot of other things as well. He had all the accolades. You look at every record there is that's positive, even on the defensive end of things, and Jordan is somewhere to be found in there. His stats were mind-boggling. His eye test, the abilities he had over his opponents was painfully obvious. And he just won and won and won and won. He won all the awards. There's nothing he couldn't do. There's nothing he didn't accomplish. And he did it in less time than most of the people that, like LeBron and Kareem and others that people would argue are close to him, or maybe in some people's minds have surpassed him. They took far more seasons to do it than he did. So there's a lot of reasons why Jordan is the greatest. 6-0 in the finals is certainly one of them. To me, it's not like the end-all, be-all trump card, right? Like, boom, 6-0. But I will say having a winning record on the biggest stage, that's a big deal. That's a really big deal. You don't want to have a losing record in the finals. Are you kidding me? Like Tom Brady, 7-2 in the Super Bowl, right? He's just lost the 2 to the Giants. And so to have a winning record at the biggest stage, that's a big deal. That's what winners do. That's what true champions do. Steph wants that. He got hurt, quote unquote hurt, at the end of game 3. Al Horford rolls up on his leg. It looks like something happened. He's got historically kind of weak ankles, Steph does. They've gotten a lot better, plus he's got those heavy-duty braces he usually wears, but it looked like, oh shoot, that might be bad. This could be really bad for the Warriors going into Game 4. Well, he had his best game ever, scored 43 points. So he's well on pace for Finals MVP. He's been far and away the best player in the series. Tatum's been very up and down, but guess what? That's Tatum. And so Jaylen Brown's been pretty consistently great, not phenomenal, not good, but I would say just slightly above good, maybe great is a good description. So to me, the Celtics are playing as good as they can. Like, hand it to Ime Udoka. He's done a heck of a job with this team. They're better than Brad Stevens ever had them. And they're tough on the road. I don't know what it is about playing at home that they're not so good at. 6-5, these playoffs at home, just kind of bizarre. A lot of credit to him, a lot of credit to the Celtics for even being here. And they definitely have a chance. And like I said, so far they've looked like the better team in this series. But I go back to those two things. One, the home court advantage that I do think will make a difference for the Warriors. And two, their experience and the fact that they're due for breakout games. So really it's three things. The home court advantage, their experience shining through at some point and just showing them, boom, we can beat these guys twice in a row. Nobody's done it this postseason. Celtics have not lost 2 in a row. I think tonight that changes. To me, the winner of this game, Game 5, wins the series. Obviously, that's not exactly going out on a limb. It's 2-2, so whoever wins this is only going to have to win one more of the next 2. And the worst case scenario is that it's a home game for each team. And so, not exactly like a huge prediction there, but it happens all the time. It's happened plenty where a team is up 3-2 and they lose the series 4-3. So it's not like unheard of. But this is a critical game. And the Celtics need this one really, really bad because they have not been great at home. The next game is in Boston. And even if they have been great on the road, do they really want to have to win another one coming back in Game 7 against the Warriors who, I mean, they're the Warriors. They've got far more finals experience. The Celtics did just win a Game 7 in Miami. I was there for that. And so I know they can do it. They know they can do it. But the finals is a different animal. This is for all the marbles. This isn't for some throwaway trophy of Western Conference or Eastern Conference championship. This is it. This is for everything. This is what starts to cement you as an all-time great player. If you're a Jason Tatum and you have those aspirations, which he's not even close to that yet, an all-time great, but if he has those aspirations, which I guarantee he does, this is something that has to be on your resume to be taken seriously. Otherwise, for your entire life, you'll be like Charles Barkley, who is an all-time great, but what is he constantly told? You don't have a ring. So Tatum wants it. You know he does. That can make you nervous. That can make you be very up and down like he has been, right? Very inconsistent. But again, the three things. Home court for the Warriors. Experience shining through. They've been here. They've done that. I don't think they're intimidated. And then 3, 2 of their best players, Klay Thompson and Draymond Green, have played awful, and they're still tied in this series 2-2. Klay hasn't played awful. Klay's played average. Draymond has played awful. If either of those guys can just play average while the other one has a breakout game, there's no question the Warriors win tonight. And I got to think that's going to happen. And I think you're going to see it tonight. And my bet is that both those players play better tonight than they have all series. I think Golden State wins this. I think Golden State wins the series. I had said Golden State in 6. Again, Celtics have looked better. I've been ping-ponging, back and forth on who I think is going to win the series based on who just lost by 10 points. It's like Game 4, 10-point win for Golden State. Game 3, double-digit win for, it's like every game, it's like a different team wins by double digits. I just want to see a good, hard-fought game down to the wire. I want to be entertained. I don't care who wins ultimately. I kind of want the Warriors because it's kind of fun watching them be back here without Kevin Durant. Speaking of Kevin Durant, he's tweeting everybody. His legacy is tainted by his extreme insecurities and his just bizarre behavior. He villainized himself by going to the Warriors years ago, and he's just never recovered. He just has become this like grumpy old man almost. And it's sad to watch. I mean, he knows he left them to go form a super team and do it on his own with Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving left the Celtics to go do it on his own with Kevin Durant, and neither one of them did it. They got swept by the Celtics. Now they're watching their two former teams battle it out in an epic finals that's tied 2-2. So not looking good for Kevin Durant. If he retires with his only 2 titles being on a super team Warriors, who had Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green in their absolute upper echelon primes, if those are the only 2 titles you win, were like cheat code type titles, I'm sorry, like you can't put a Kevin Durant ahead of like a Larry Bird. You just can't do it. And to me, his legacy is just kind of dropping bit by bit. His ability is there. But guess what? So is Allen Iverson's ability. So is Carmelo Anthony's for years. These guys could score lights out. That's what Kevin Durant does. But you're telling me if Allen Iverson had gone and joined a mega super team like that he wouldn't have titles too? You're telling me if Carmelo Anthony didn't join mega super teams like that, he wouldn't have titles too? Of course they would. So Kevin Durant, to me, as great as he is, as spectacular as he is, and he is better than those 2 guys I just mentioned. He is better than AI. He is better than Melo. But if you take away the titles and you just look at their primes, their scoring abilities, it's not that big of a difference. The titles set him apart. He's got 1 MVP. AI got an MVP. And so, I don't know. I don't know that they're that different without those titles. And he only got them because he joined mega super teams. And now he's on Twitter fighting with every 12-year-old out there with a burner account. And it's just weird. It's just weird behavior. I just wish he'd humble himself, get over his insecurities, and be the dominant player we know he can be. But his prime is definitely, he's on the downslope. He's fighting injuries. He chose poorly in having Kyrie Irving as a running mate. James Harden, that was a debacle. It's just not looking good for the Nets. It's not looking good for Kevin Durant, but we'll see. But it is nice to see the Warriors back there without him, and I would love to see them get it done without him, because you could also argue on the flip side that without Kevin Durant, does Steph Curry have 3? Probably not. He had 1 without him, and he maybe gets 1 more without him. One of those 2 maybe goes his way because they were obviously good enough to get there. But anyway, that's all the time I have for today, you guys. I'm very excited for tonight's game. I hope you guys can listen to this before the game. I'll do another one soon. But again, it's 2-2. The winner of Game 5, to me, is going to win this whole series. My money is on the Warriors. They are favored by 4. I hope it's that close because so far it hasn't been that close in most games. Even though the series is close, the games haven't been. But again, look for experience. Look for Draymond Green and Klay Thompson to break out. And look for the Warriors to be dominant at home. Just a little bit more dominant at home than the Celtics have been on the road. That's all the time I have for today. You guys are awesome. Please subscribe. I am out. Peace.
Thanks for hanging with Simply the Best Sports Take. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and check out STB Sports Take.com. Simply the best in sports.